Hi and welcome to Cherry Pie Math. This video is going to go over how to make unit rates using any two quantities that you're given. So before we get started, you should know how to divide fractions by hand, and you should know what a ratio is. And I'll link both of those videos as well. So let's say you're at the grocery store, and you've probably seen this before. You want some potato chips, and one of them is a bag that is 226.8 grams for $2.50, and the other one is 198.4 grams for $2.40. Which one makes more sense to get? So based off of price, you'd say, oh, $2.40 is cheaper. I should get that. But this one has much less weight than the other one. Well, maybe not much less, but less. A little bit. And you'll often see at the grocery store, they'll say like this cents per thing, because it's easy to compare it that way. That's why like Costco is great, because you can get a smaller amount at Walmart, and yes, it's a little bit more expensive at Costco, but the cost per item, you're getting a much better deal. So if I was to try to compare them, I would say, well, the first one I have 226.8 grams for $2.50, and the other one is 198.4 grams, I should put a G, for $2.40. And if I wanted to know like the price per gram, and I like to write this down because that helps me remember what goes first. So I would do like 250 divided by 226.8, and likewise 240 divided by 198.4, and compare the two. So if I do, let's see, 250 or 2.5 divided by 226.8, that gets me 0.01102 blah blah blah. And the other one gets me, let's see, 2.4 divided by 198.4 is 0.0120 blah blah blah. So we can see that this one is cheaper per gram. It's not a whole lot, but it does make more sense that you're getting more value, more bang for your buck, as you could say. So just to review really quick what a unit rate is. A unit rate is a ratio between two quantities where one quantity is 1 unit. The most helpful kind of unit rates are the ones where 1 is in the denominator. So for example, like you'll often see like dollars per pound, and this is because it's dollars per 1 pound, for example. So you could say like $3 per 1 pound, or you could say, I don't know, like words per minute. So like you would have the words per 1 minute. But miles per hour, for example, that's another one where you have like 70 miles per 1 hour. You could switch it up and it would still be a unit rate because one of them is a 1. But when the 1 is in the denominator, that's going to be a lot more helpful going forward because that allows you to compare it with other unit rates better. So if I was to look at these and find the unit rates, I'm looking for stuff that only has 1 in the denominator. Often when we have 1 in the denominator, we actually don't even write the 1. So like this is a unit rate because it's just 1 pound, for example. Or let's see, we've got 89 words per minute, 1 hour per 1 child, and 20 books per library card. So these are 4 unit rates. The other ones are not technically unit rates. They are rates. They're just not unit rates because none of them have a 1 in them. So let's see what we can figure out. So what are some of the similarities between the unit rates and the non-unit rates? Is they both, I want my pen for this, they both compared to quantities with units, I should say. And that's not always going to be the case. Like often in mathematics, we kind of translate between the real world and the mathematical world, but because we're introducing it here about unit rates, we are going to be having actual physical units with each of these numbers. What's different is that non-unit rates don't have 1. But that's not to say that there will never be a 1. So for example, let's look at the 4 that that weren't unit rates. But as long as we're given 2 quantities, we can make a unit rate. And the way we do this is we really just have to divide those 2 numbers, and that will help us. When we're basically simplifying it, like if I had a fraction that was like, I don't know, 3/6, I would really change it. Actually, let me change that to 6/3. If I had 6/3 and I divided both of them by 3, then I'd have 1 and 2. And even if it was 3/6 and I made it into 1/2, because it's a unit rate and there's not actually a reason for you to have specific units where they are, you could just change it to be 2/1 as well. That's fine because of the rates. Just be careful about that. Okay, so let's look at this one. So I would do 120 divided by 4, because remember, that's all the fraction does. A ratio compares these 2 quantities through division. So 120 divided by 4 is 30. So it's really 30, and then we keep the same units. So gallons per mile, for example. Or like 7/3. This one's kind of grosser. So because that one's not going to come out very nice, I'm going to go ahead and just use a decimal for it. It would be 2.3, because if I do 7 divided by 3, that becomes 2.333, etc. So it'd be 2.33. Usually 2 decimal points is fine. Dollars per ounce. You could also write it as $2.33 per ounce as well. This is also totally fine. Either way you do it, I don't really care. So again, we have 528 divided by 2. That's going to be, let's see, 264. So it'd be 264 trees per acre. That's how you would read it. We say this is per, or 2 or 2a. And then last but not least, I have 3 divided by 2, which is 1.5. So I have 1.5 quizzes per week. Like that. There are different kinds of ratios. So we've seen it so far we've seen it in just the fraction form, but you might also say like there's a half mile and a quarter hour, for example. So if I was to do that, I just set it up like this. I have half a mile per 1/4 hour, and that's the setup. But remember, a unit rate has to have a 1 usually in the denominator. And so I would do 1/2 divided by 1/4. And if you remember from dividing fractions, you don't actually have to use a calculator for this. You can just do this one by hand. You copy, and then you dot, and then you flip, which comes out to be, and then you just multiply across. So that becomes 4, that becomes 2, which simplifies to 2/1. And then remember, anything over 1 is just whatever's on top. So this would just be 2 miles per hour. So this one is actually really important. This one is straight from the Utah standards. That you should know how to do this one if you have 2 fractions. So if you have 2 fractions, you divide them by copy, dot, and then flip by the reciprocal. And then you simplify it, and that's your answer there. Or you might see like 7/2. All that really means is that it's 7/2, and then student to teacher, that just means student goes on top and teacher goes on bottom. And then if I was to do 7 divided by 2, I'd get 3.5. So it's a 3.5 student to teacher ratio. And what that means is for every 1 teacher, there are 3.5 students that go with it. And again, you really just keep doing this. So this is 4.30 over $7 to bananas. So you would just say So for 7, this is saying for 7 bananas, it was $4.30 basically. So it's $4.30 for 7 bananas. You divide them, and this one's a weird one, so I'm going to use my calculator. So it's roughly about 0.61-ish dollars per banana. And then finally we have another one. The ratio is just a colon, really. And again, that's all you have to do is just put the first one. So the first one is formula over 9/10 for baby weight. And I've been thinking about this because my own baby has trouble eating. And again, we would just do the division of fractions. So you have 3/2 divided by 9/10. So you copy, dot, flip, and that becomes 30/18. And then I can simplify that by dividing out 6. And that becomes 5/3. So you could, but this is technically still not a unit rate, kind of. You could say like it's 5/3 on the top for formula over baby weight. You can also say it as a decimal, and that's usually what most people will do. Is the only real way to compare different ratios is to compare the unit rates, because otherwise we're comparing. So we can't compare ratios that aren't unit rates, because then we're comparing two things at the same time, two qualities, that's what I'm trying to say. Two qualities of things at the same time, which isn't really helpful. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, they have these weird graphs that are like the popularity of Nicolas Cage to the consumption of cheese, and they match up. Like, obviously that has nothing to do with each other. So that's the unit rates helps us to concentrate on just one thing at a time. An easy way to do this is to convert it to a fraction, and then to a decimal. So to keep this video short, I'm just going to do these really fast. So we have a lot of things here. They're all different kinds of units, but all of it is the same. So the first one, we would do 5 divided by 1. That would be 5 video games to people. The second one, for every 5/3 cups of flour, you add 1/2. So if I do 5/3 divided by 1/2, which I would get 3.33. So I'm just going to go ahead and circle these. And then it's flour per water. 8/9, 0.889. And that goal's blocked 2 attempts. 12 to $2 to pounds of grapes would just be $6 per pound. And I know the units are kind of annoying, but I want you guys to get in the habit of writing those units. 1 kilo is 2.2 pounds. In another universe, you could switch these. However, because we're comparing a lot of different things, we want to keep the order the same. So I would have the kilos on top. So this would be 0.45 kg per pound. And then the last one is 70,000 salary divided by 10,000 saved, which would be 7 salary per dollar per saved, I guess. Okay. So I have all my numbers, and then all I have to do is order from least to greatest now, because I've made them all into unit rates. It's a lot easier to compare them. So obviously this one is the smallest, so it'd be E, and then I think it would be C next, and then it would be B, and then it would be A, and then it would be D, and then it would be F. So some things to remember, it's most helpful to have that one in the denominator so that you can compare the numerators, just like we did in that last example, but so that you only have that one thing that's different per item. Ratios can take different forms. You might see them in a fraction, you might see them with a colon, you might see them in the words to, but just remember whatever is first is divided by whatever second. Don't forget units, and then use division of fractions if you have fractions in your ratio. And really, you're just going to be doing that anyway. So just divide the first one by the second. Usually you can use a calculator. I would get used to doing it by hand. Anyway, good luck, and hopefully it all goes well.